emphasis on power and knockouts in this fight. And of course, for Canelo, especially being in his current state, again, we got over to the fact that he doesn't really throw punches and bunches anymore. He relies mostly on 1 to 2 punches thrown at a time, unless when he's doing that sequence of jab, 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 haymaker, whatever, it's going to be the uppercut, the straight right, whatever else. I have said that I am concerned with right hands, but I've been concerned with Crawford and right hands even during the Mean Machine fight. I was telling people this fight isn't what you people think. Mean Machine is going to cause some problems to Bud, and Bud's going to need to look out for the right hand. And people are like, "You're stupid. It's green beans. It's Green Machine," and all this other nonsense. People, they don't do too much research on fights, and styles do make fights, which is another point we'll get to here in later on in this video. But Terrence Crawford, whether he fights in the southpaw position, I prefer that he uses some more orthodox, conventional, in this fight. But Crawford's going to do what he's going to do. Mental-wise, I've expressed that I'm not concerned. I believe it's the most important aspect of this fight. Canelo, even if we're going to use the skull fight, he threw a, very low output. It just goes to show you his mentality even further, the entitlement. He's even here crying to Turkey, "Don't run." He needs guys tailor-fitted and to basically do how he wants them to fight and everything else. There's a lot of suspicion that Canelo's been involved in a lot of silent agreement type fights. And this even includes Skull. I don't know why Skull would need to tell us this. I don't see Skull as someone who's going to lie when he says that Turkey instructed him not to try to beat Canelo. But this is what I'm saying. From what I've seen, and there's more stuff coming out concerning Crawford, I think he's at the perfect size. He's at where he needs to be. I believe he did peak during camp. I think the results speak for themselves. Him and his team are very confident. Bomac is very confident. I don't see it as they're trying to save face and just fool the masses into a false sense of security and confidence. I believe they truly believe that they're going to come in and win this fight. Canelo, again, I got to go back to this mental before we cover this power stuff that you guys are so focused on. And again, I've been watching these fights, especially after Bivol. He challenges Ryder, after surgery. He makes comments like, "If I lose this fight, I'm going to retire." To me, that's a real big red flag. He has an 18-by-18 ring. He manages to hurt a guy who I think can be knocked out, although he is sturdy. Ryder was knocked out his next fight. Munguia was knocked out his next fight. Berlanga was knocked out his next fight, guys. So I don't sit here and I don't really try to, just play the fan group versus fan group and I'm just diehard riding for Crawford. I do try to back it up with research. And, when you notice types of trends like that, whatever else, it's good to know that type of information, call that out. But again, the mentality is the biggest part that I think is going to play the factor here. And it's no secret that Canelo gasses, and I think he has a propensity to give up. Now, again, it's even coming out with the rumors with Droninus that he quit during sparring. I'm not putting too much emphasis on that. But just like I just told you how you have these type of opponents that are easily knocked out, in my opinion, they're not really high-caliber opponents. Berlanga was getting exposed way before he fought Canelo Alvarez, for example. Munguia, same deal, They kind of milked both fighters' careers, Berlanga magically, has a record for first-round knockouts, but again, as soon as he steps up, you start seeing how he got exposed. But the thing is this, it's going to present a problem for Bud. And, Bud, he's going to need to watch out for the right hands. This has always been the problem. But I think that if Canelo cannot knock out Crawford within the first 6 rounds, guys, I'm sorry. I don't think this is going to be a fight where Canelo can do what he did to guys like Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, or whoever else. You allow Charlo, who wasn't even trying to beat you and fight you as well. This is another pattern that you got to notice. Some of these guys ain't trying to even beat you, like a Jermell Charlo, like a Skull. You understand? And there's some people that believe Skull actually won the fight. So you take that however you want. But if a guy like Charlo, and again, wasn't even trying to knock you out, was gun shy, was pacified during the fight, wasn't even really trying to win, and all these other guys are making it to a 12th round, I think there's a high probability Crawford's going to make it to the last round and, be able to finish the entire fight. Now, again, we just talked about how Canelo slows down. He fatigues. In his most recent fights, hasn't had a knockout in like 7 fights since Caleb Plant, I believe. Slows down, even when he does manage to knock guys down. There's a probability, if his power is the truth, again, he can hurt Canelo or Crawford early in this fight. But I've already stated this a million times. I keep beating a dead horse. Can you finish Crawford? And I think that's where we have to be realistic with this whole power and KOs from both sides. Now, Bomac has even expressed that, once this dude slows down, it's a wrap. And I got to agree. We've talked about this, how Crawford, he can still play chess in the later rounds. Canelo has shown that he can't really play chess. He can't really make adjustments. I think he could have took more advantage of Skull, but I think he was frustrated during the Skull fight. This goes back to mentality of you have an entitlement and an expectation for how you want your opponents to even fight you now. You know what I'm saying? And again, you're here crying to turkey about not running and whatever else. It's a little windy out here. I hope, we'll see. We'll see when I upload this. We'll see how the quality is. But again, guys, another thing too, which is a trend in Canelo's career, when you are met against another elite fighter that has another elite set of skills, you understand? It's not just that you're having these close fights, you know what I'm saying, where it could be controversial, whatever else. And I understand the GGG fights, but I mean like the Floyd fights. I mean like the Bivol fights. You understand? This goes back to power again, and this is a case for Crawford. Crawford doesn't need to have this bone-crunching power in this fight, and this has been proven before in Canelo Alvarez's career. Floyd had enough power to make Canelo respect him. What really got to Canelo was the fact that Floyd was able to land clean, effective shots that Canelo really didn't really have an answer for, whether it be a sneaky uppercut in between Canelo's guard, getting when Canelo gets tired, tricking, playing with him, going body head. He was just attacking whatever Canelo was leaving open, and Crawford more than enough has that type of ability. And I believe in this fight that although he may not have bone crunching power, that's just going to flatline Canelo. All he's going to need is respectable power that's going to make Canelo respect him. And that's all you really need. We've seen Canelo been whitewashed twice. Just because the judges' scorecard said he had a draw with Floyd, and 3 judges' scorecard said he only lost by 1 round versus Bivol. We all got eyes. We can all see what happened in those fights. I don't even think Canelo was even involved in those fights. And that's what I'm saying. This is from the beginning of your career, and this is from the ending of your career. You understand? And you people, you just got to pay attention to the trends and patterns of these fighters. When it comes to Bud, I guess the best you guys have to say is Gamboa 10 years ago, as far as Crawford being hurt when he was showboating. And you have this Madrimov fight where you claim was such this ridiculous robbery. You know what I'm saying? And then we compare that with the Canelo. We could get into the lore as someone you should have rematched and did far better than what Madrimov did to Crawford. Notice how you guys don't hold these guys on the same standards. You know what I'm saying? But regardless of all that, I don't think Crawford's ever had a split decision. If he did, it was probably early on in his career, but he's had a pretty dominant, clear to victory path throughout his career. We're not really questioning like this insanity. You guys saw Madrimov land some right hands and you guys went insane. But again, this is a guy that landed like 80 punches on Bud. You guys don't bat an eye when I show you a guy landing 170 on your dude Canelo. And this guy gets knocked out by 1 punch his next fight, by the way. But regardless of all that, it's not really power, Canelo, if his little 1 to 2 punches and his little bursts, if he doesn't, especially in the first 6 rounds, managed to knock out Terrence Crawford. I don't think he's going to knock him out. You understand? I don't think his Gervonta Davis game plan and his Deontay Wilder game plan, let's give up a bunch of rounds, which is what he normally does, and he's done this throughout his career. You understand? If he throws himself, gets too active and stuff early, he has to take off rounds in the middle, and then he tries to burst, later on in the fight to solidify his victories. But Canelo, again, he's a guy, he wants to be the Floyd Mayweather in this fight. He wants to be the Floyd Mayweather of his career. He's a guy, he doesn't want to throw all these punches. He wants to look like the more skilled counterpuncher, things like that. And, trying to beat Floyd with his own style didn't work. And you're facing another elite fighter with the elite set of skills. You're fighting what you're not normally used to. Terrence Crawford is not Caleb Plant. He's not going to sit here and be like, good job, Canelo, for beating me up. He's not going to do any of that stuff. He's not Billy Joe Sanders, who does cocaine, whatever else. You understand? He's not Jermell Charlo. I'm sorry. The Castaño fight showed you that, Jermell could already take L's. The Tony Harrison fight showed you that this dude could take L's and have trouble throughout his career. That's just not Terrence Crawford. You understand? Again, I guess your best case is this Madrimov fight. And some of you saw it one way, and you even believe Ortiz did better than Bud. All those statistics and damage and, stuff like that does not support your theory. But again, it's been pretty consistent. A consistent pattern has been Crawford has been able to figure guys out, especially when they have a limited move set. In this case, we have a Canelo that doesn't put punches together. He doesn't go out there, use his size advantage like he should have versus a Floyd Mayweather. He would actually win a round, in my opinion, if he tried to bully Floyd and just put his punches together. No, you were actually trying to beat Floyd at his own game. And in this fight, I believe he's going to do the same thing. He did try to pick up his output for Bivol, but that ended up hurting him even more, especially as the fight went on. He got tired, and he could only throw the same combination all night. We also saw this during the Skull fight. Again, he didn't really try anything or vary anything up, to try to catch Skull. He did the same sequence the entire night, and it got to the point where he didn't even want to waste his output. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, okay, I know I got this win in the bag. Do I need to really even exert myself at this point? And this is what I'm saying. One guy has had, in my opinion, more adversity. You guys are going to say different because the names that are on the resume. But again, when you're fighting a Shea Mosley, for example, who's in a 4-loss and a draw, streak, you understand, and then you fight him, or you're fighting guys when it's, opportunistic, whether it's guys like Miguel Cotto, again, when you, what's his name? Is it Franklin or I forgot his name? You're not fighting these guys in optimum moments. You know what I'm saying? And again, these guys, they have to subject themselves to, rehydration clauses. There's some weird things going on with their training camps. Like Colin Smith doesn't even get a full training camp. So really, it was fat camp on, on steroids, you understand. He has to focus more on cutting weight than it is maybe, focusing on tactics and things like that, But these guys, it's their fault because they put themselves in these situations. They want the payday or whatever else, And really, Colin Smith is another guy. What your best win was maybe Andrew George Grooves. Was it Endow or I forgot the dude's name? It wasn't Endow. He was a punch-drunk dude, but again, you didn't really have any real solid wins even on your own resume by the time you fought Canelo Alvarez. Everyone was just propping you up for whatever reason. But again, this is a different case, you're dealing with a different fighter. You're dealing with another elite. And Canelo doesn't tend to do well with other elites. He has problems even with guys like a Munguia, you understand. These guys can easily get about 4 to 5 rounds consistently on Canelo Alvarez, you understand. Bud, again, just like Floyd, who was easily, the smaller guy, Canelo outweighed him by around 20 pounds. We all know the story. Again, he didn't have the power to knock Canelo out, but he just needed the power to get Canelo to respect him. And respect is, I believe, going to be even in the early rounds. Timothy Bradley tends to disagree, but I do agree with Bradley's approach that Canelo should try to batter this dude and try to move a little bit faster instead of his normal thing of giving up rounds. Because if you want to play a chess game with Bud, I think you're going to lose. I think Bud, just like a Floyd, is going to be able to pick the openings. He's going to land the clean shots. You're going to try to burst. If they're trying to give you credit for block shots that are just landing hard on hips and shoulders and arms, like they did versus Akam Smith, and how they tried to justify you losing only one round to Bivol. There could be some problems there, but Bud is a competitor. He knows how to step it up as the fight goes on, and I think Bud will continue to make on the fly adjustments to whatever Canelo tries, and ultimately, it's going to be like a boa constrictor. The more you breathe, the more tight the boa constrictor, constricts on you. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's going to be the same thing with the Canelo Alvarez in this fight. Bud always exceeds what I expect. I'm just picking the safe bet that it's Bud by decision. But, again, there's other factors as well. Canelo doesn't particularly do good against older fighters such as GGG, who were far older than him, and Floyd Mayweather, again, who was smaller and older, by the way. From their perspective, they saw it as a cherry pick. Even the Bivol fight, from their perspective, they saw as a cherry pick. And I'm pretty sure from their perspective, they see this as a cherry pick, especially with Crawford moving up, a couple weight classes. But, kind of lost my train of thought there. But the trend also is you're not really good against guys with more elite skills who are even older than you. And this is another consistent pattern throughout Canelo's career, whether he's, was a younger fighter or just 23-year-old fighting Floyd Mayweather, whether, he was a little bit older fighting a GGG. And I don't think it's going to break from the trend in this fight either. Again, seeing Crawford, seeing the confidence, and again, just seeing how his body shape, things like that, for the first 6 rounds, I think he's built perfectly. That's where Canelo's power is really going to be more effective at, even if he is hitting your arms and everything else, your hips, whatever else. Stamina is the most important factor in this fight, especially for a guy like Crawford, and especially for Crawford's strengths, which again is a chess game. Most of the time, he has guys thinking like it's nothing. Even Madrimov had to feint like 1,000 times, and really plan, some pretty well placed right hand shots, and I think he had his most successful round again when Terrence Crawford felt very confident the first 7 rounds, and then that 8th round again, it's Madrimov's best round. 9th round was pretty good for Madrimov too, and I think early half of the 10th. But once I think Crawford got his little, second wind, again, championship rounds, I think he has the best case. It's arguably, you can argue round 10, but 11, 12, I think are clear Bud rounds. You know what I'm saying? But regardless of all that, this guy, he's not just built for being highly effective in the early rounds. He's proven more times throughout his career that he's just as effective and devastating in the later part of the rounds. He's still typically more mentally fit than his opponents, more than the time. Again, he's a very smart guy, makes in the moment adjustments throughout the entire fight, and it becomes not just the physical aspect that he brings when he was on such a KO streak. Even when 147 with these guys all calling him small, same deal in this scenario. But again, the stamina is what's going to be important. He looks like the perfect size again, where he'll be able to handle the blunt end of what Canelo has at his optimum. And we know that Canelo's going to slow down. We've seen this again, end of Madrimov fight. Those punches, they don't have the same sting on them. You guys claim that Canelo felt sorry for Madrimov, same deal with Berlanga again. And again, he didn't even care to expend himself during a skull fight, you know what I'm saying? But even when it came to guys like Ryder, you couldn't finish him either. Even when it came to guys like Jermell Charlo, couldn't finish him either, we're just talking about the trends. And, you know, power, you guys may have a case first 6 rounds, you know what I'm saying? And as far as Crawford's punches, you guys act like they're not going to have an effect on Canelo. I disagree. His best punch in the early rounds and as a southpaw is going to be that straight left to Canelo's stomach, you understand? And he needs to really make sure that he's punching through and catching Canelo. Some of the body punches that you'll see that he landed in a Sean Porter fight, he needs to land those same type of shots on Canelo Alvarez. He's going to need to watch out, of course, for the right hands, but we'll see what he does and how he adjusts to that. But again, I think after the 6th round, when Canelo does start to tire and he's going to be making more mistakes, his left hand is going to be lower than usual. He's not going to be relying on the high guard so much anymore. I truly believe he's going to try to make a case when he has energy. That's after they rested in between the rounds. You're going to get a burst from Canelo, and, you know, he's going to try to land some hard shots. But if Bud, again, can withstand those type of moments, he can go to work, majority of those rounds afterwards, after Canelo's done blowing his load in those rounds, and just rinse, wash, repeat. But clean punching is going to need to be a factor throughout the fight. And it's got to be punches just like a Floyd Mayweather. It don't have to be bone-crushing power, but it does have to have respect, especially if you can get Canelo to want to go to the ropes and sit on the ropes and try to recover. Just be aware of his sneaky attack where he's going to burst and try to land hard punches like he normally does. And again, I think this is going to be a clear win for Terrence Crawford, and a lot of people are going to be butthurt, but we'll see. We'll see what happens on fight night. Anything can happen, but I'm still standing on my decision from day one. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.